I came back from a mandatory leave I never asked for and found a stranger sitting in my chair, sipping coffee from a mug that said, Director of Innovation. 60 minutes later, security escorted me out of the building with a thin severance envelope that felt cheaper than the paper it was printed on. That night, while the city outside my apartment buzzed like nothing had changed, I opened a contract I had signed 5 years earlier and realized something terrifying and beautiful at the same time. They hadn't just fired me. They had unknowingly fired the only product the company actually owned. My name is Avery Collins. And I don't want my seat back. I want the whole table. Until 8:12 that morning, my name had been etched in frosted glass outside the Advanced Storage Division at Helidine Labs. Avery Collins, Ph.D., Head of Advanced Energy Systems. I stood in the hallway staring at the empty space where that glass plate used to be. The 4 screws were still there, embedded in the wall like punctuation marks after a sentence that had been erased. In its place was a clean new plaque. Trent Lawson, Director of Innovation. For a moment, I honestly thought jet lag was playing tricks on me. The board had insisted I take 2 weeks off, said I looked burned out, said it was for the good of the company. I had built this division from a rented basement lab into a $40 million asset. I was the one who stabilized the lithium flow without thermal runaway. I wasn't just part of the architecture. I was the architecture. I tapped my badge against the reader. No green light. Just a low red buzz that echoed louder than it should have. I tried again. Denied. The hallway began to fill with people. Engineers I hired. Developers whose code I reviewed line by line. People who used to stop by my office for advice. They saw me. And then, almost in unison, they looked away. Phones. Shoes. The carpet. I had become invisible in a building made of glass. Ms. Collins, a voice said quietly. Frank from security stood a few feet away, hand hovering near his radio like he didn't want to use it. I'm sorry. Your clearance has been revoked. I need to escort you out. Escort me out of my own lab. The absurdity almost made me laugh. Instead, I nodded. Open the door, Frank. He swiped his master badge. The lock clicked. The air inside smelled wrong. Usually it smelled like solder and warm electronics. Today it smelled like expensive cologne. Trent Lawson was sitting in my chair. Feet on my desk. My desk. His loafers rested directly on my schematics. He didn't jump up. He smiled. The kind of smile people practice in mirrors. Avery, he said, standing casually. You're back early. We were going to call you. My monitors were dark. My notebook was gone. In its place sat a single manila envelope. What are you doing in my chair? I asked. My voice didn't shake, even though my chest felt like it was collapsing inward. We're pivoting, he said smoothly. The board wants a fresh narrative for Series C, less technical detail, more vision. I'm stepping in as Director of Innovation. I stared at him. You're a marketing strategist, I said. You think a kilowatt hour is a unit of time. He chuckled, dismissive. Technical work can be outsourced. Vision can't. Your role is redundant. He handed me the envelope. 6 weeks of pay. 3 months of benefits. Generous, he called it. They had already packed my things. A cardboard box sat in the corner. My framed doctorate. A plant my mother gave me. 5 years of my life reduced to a box someone else touched without asking. My laptop? I asked. Wiped, Trent said. Company property. Of course they had scrubbed the evidence. Or so they thought. He slid a clipboard toward me. Exit acknowledgement. Non-disparagement. Waiving rights. Sign here. I picked up the pen, walked to the visitor log by the door, and wrote my name under purpose of visit. I wrote one word. Theft. I didn't sign anything else. I picked up the box and walked out. The walk through the office felt endless. Click. 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 Don't run. Don't cry. Don't let them see you bleed. I put the box in my car, sat there for 10 minutes, and breathed until the rage turned cold. They thought the game was over because they'd swept the board clean. They didn't realize I wasn't a piece. I designed the rules. My apartment was silent. I didn't unpack the box. I went straight to the filing cabinet in my closet. Bottom drawer. A thin blue folder labeled Helidine Incorporation. Inside was the original employment contract. Cheap paper. Faded ink. Signed in a coffee shop when Helidine was 3 guys in a garage and me, the only one who understood the chemistry. I flipped to clause 11.2. I remembered the argument. They wanted full work for hire. I refused. My research predated the company. They needed me more than I needed them. The clause was still there. Clear as day. All inventions remain the property of the creator unless a separate written assignment is executed. My heart started pounding. I opened my personal laptop. Logged into my private email archive. Searched for assignment. I found paperwork for minor designs. Logos. Cooling vents. But not the core system. Not the grid architecture. I went to the patent database and typed my name. 7 results. 7 patents. All listed Avery Collins as sole inventor. No assignment. No transfer. I leaned back in my chair as the truth settled in. Helidine's entire valuation was built on technology they didn't legally own. They had fired the landlord. I poured a glass of wine and stared at the contract on the floor. This wasn't the end of my career. This was the beginning of my acquisition. I picked up my phone and scrolled until I found a name I hadn't called in years. Maya Reynolds. Intellectual property attorney. The woman who warned me engineers were the most exploited resource in America. I pressed call. I was wondering when you'd reach out, she said. They fired you, didn't they? Yes, I replied. Did they make you sign anything? No. The pause on the line was long and dangerous. Meet me in 40 minutes, Maya said. Bring everything. By the time I left my apartment, I wasn't angry anymore. I was focused. Somewhere across the city, Helidine was celebrating a clean transition, a shiny new director of innovation, and a future they believed they owned. They had no idea that the foundation beneath them wasn't theirs at all. And they were about to find out, the hard way. By the time I reached Maya Reynolds' office, the shock had burned off and left something sharper behind. Focus. Precision. The kind of calm that shows up right before a storm. Maya didn't waste time. She flipped through my contract, paused at clause 11.2, then pulled up the patent records on her screen. 7 filings. 7 approvals. 0 assignments. She leaned back in her chair and smiled without warmth. Avery, she said, they're not just exposed. They're naked. Helidine was weeks away from pitching Series C, $60 million, contingent on proprietary technology. Technology they didn't own. If investors found out now, they might panic, circle the wagons, try to bury it quietly. So we don't move yet, Maya said. We let them step all the way into it. We built the plan over cold coffee and legal pads. Silence first. No LinkedIn posts. No angry emails. No threats. Let them believe I was gone, broken, grateful for severance. While they talked, we documented every interview, every slide, every claim. If they said the tech was theirs, we logged it. We needed them on record. 2 days later, Trent Lawson posted a photo online. He stood in my old lab, pointing at my whiteboard, captioned with words like future and breakthrough. I saved the image, timestamped it, archived the page. By the end of the week, Hellodyne's CEO, Graham Ellison, was doing podcasts, calling the architecture a team innovation. I transcribed his words and paired them with dates and patent numbers. They kept talking. We kept collecting. Then a former assistant, Jenna, messaged me from a stairwell, whispering fear into her phone. "They're using your drawings," she said. "Same diagrams. New colors. They didn't even change the file's signature." She sent photos of the investor deck. In the corner of the render, barely visible, was my internal version stamp. Proof they'd lifted the files directly. That was the moment the plan shifted from strong to lethal. Maya sent a single, polite packet to the investor's law firm. No accusations. Just documents. Contracts. Patents. Screenshots. A question at the end that read like a courtesy. "Please confirm the chain of title." That was it. We didn't call Hellodyne. We let the lawyers do what lawyers do best. 2 days later, the noise stopped. A magazine profile disappeared. A funding rumor went quiet. The investor's website quietly changed Hellodyne's status to under extended review. Inside the company, panic detonated. Jenna texted me that legal was tearing through old files, executives were shouting, and Graham had canceled a conference trip. He knew something was wrong. He just didn't know how bad. The calendar invite arrived at 6 in the morning. Emergency board meeting. IP clarification. My name listed as required. Maya told me to wear a suit. "You're not going back as staff," she said. "You're going back as leverage." The video call opened to gray faces and stiff smiles. Graham tried to call it a clerical oversight. The investor's attorney corrected him. "A missing file is an error," he said. "An absent transfer is a defect." He read clause 11.2 out loud. Silence swallowed the room. "Do you have an assignment?" the attorney asked. Graham didn't answer. When I unmuted, my voice was steady. "I never signed one," I said. And I was terminated without being asked to. The investors didn't argue. They paused the funding on the spot. 24 hours to resolve it, or they walked and notified regulators. When the screen went dark, Graham stared at me like I'd set fire to his house. "Name your price," he said. "I don't want money," I replied. "I want a meeting." The next morning, I walked back into Hellodyne. Franket security didn't stop me. The boardroom was full. Investors. Lawyers. Executives who suddenly remembered my name. Maya slid the licensing agreement across the table. Non-exclusive. 3 years. A percentage of gross revenue. Retroactive fees. Mandatory attribution. My name on every deck, every brochure, every box. Graham argued. The chairman shut him down. The investors stood up to leave. Graham folded. He signed. Then the board slid another document forward. His resignation. Effective immediately. Trent followed him out, escorted by the same security guard who once walked me out. The symmetry was quiet and perfect. An investor asked if I wanted the CTO role. I smiled and declined. "I don't want the chair," I said. "I want the rent." I left the building lighter than I'd felt in years. They still had the office. The staff. The brand. But the product, the thing that mattered, answered to me now. Power isn't loud. It doesn't need a title. Sometimes it's just knowing the rules better than everyone else and waiting for the right moment to remind them. If you enjoyed this story, tell me where you're watching from and what you think Avery should do next. Hit like if you felt that ending. Subscribe to the channel for more true-style corporate revenge stories, and I'll see you in the next one.